Okay.
think that's a city thing, man.
It's a planning question. So
In Little Rock, there are good east-west arterial roads, but not good north-south arterial roads. And why are there no arterial roads west of 430? On the north side of the river, there are good north-south arterial roads, but almost no east-west arterial roads. It's real interesting how that developed. The north-south arterial roads in Little Rock are limited by their ability to cross the Fush Bottoms. So basically, you've got three ways across the Fush Bottoms. You've got I-30, you've got University Avenue, and you've got I-430. If you look at the way the city developed, and just take a street map and lay it out, where you see a rectilinear street pattern, small blocks, a lot of connectivity, that occurred largely before the Second World War. After the Second World War, we fell in love with the automobile, and we started doing planning and zoning and minimum lot sizes and low density and curvilinear streets and cul-de-sacs everywhere. And there's not been a requirement, and thanks to Bud's neighborhood, we have even less connectivity in West Little Rock than we would have, because we don't build out our master street plan. And that's a problem that Little Rock has. And when we do build it out, and Chenal Parkway is a good example, then the city changes the land use plan and gets the traffic carrying capacity of it. So that's just kind of the way things have evolved. Folks don't like, in West Little Rock, don't like connectivity apparently. And so I always drive down Chenal Parkway and I look at that house on the hill that backs up to the Walmart store and realize that the kid in that house can't walk down the hill to Walmart. He's got to get mom to get his car out and get on Chenal Parkway. So all of the trips are forced onto the few major arterials, and they're terribly, terribly congested. West Little Rock's not close to build out, and with no connectivity, there's no way to solve the congestion. There's no way.
If I can jump back in there, since I might have been part of the problem listening to that. The issue that I see in Little Rock is fundamental, and that is that the city refuses to pay for roads. And they force that cost onto state and federal taxpayers when they force freeways to operate as arterials. It's called an interstate, folks. It's not the only way to Walmart. But if you live in Sherwood, or if you live in Bryant, it may very well be. And that's, and I pick on those two cities too, because I don't want you to think that this is just a Little Rock thing. That we have let government off the hook to the extent that we're not going to be taxed for roads. Fort Smith taxes itself for roads. Fayetteville taxes itself for trails. When you go up there and start checking out their bike trails, they go everywhere. They're paying a dedicated tax for that. In Little Rock, we've decided we're not going to tax ourselves for roads until just very recently. And that's a good thing. But we still don't have a policy of laying out a grid that we force developers to follow. And so instead, we say the developer should build the road for the city. If you're the developer, are you in the road business, or are you in the housing business, or the shopping center business? You're going to put the least amount of road possible. If there's a big mountain in there, you might put it straight up the mountain. Have you been on Napa Valley? It's cheaper than cutting the damn thing down. And they're in the housing business. And so what you get is an approximation of what roads should look like. But it's not really what you'd want in your community. And so if the Fush Bottoms are expensive to cross, which developer is going to cross them? That's a job for the city to connect. If you're cruising down John Barrow, why can't you hit Baseline? I mean, we've chosen not to have that connectivity. And then what we do, the next thing is that because connectivity costs money. Now, when I pick on Napa Valley, I will say Napa Valley is a great road if you look at the way they did the setbacks and the way they took an arterial and didn't ruin anybody's front yard with it. Now go to Mississippi and look between 630 and mark them and what the city did to those people's front yards. And then look at that little block at the end of John Barrow going to Rodney Parham. That one's a classic. That street was classed as an arterial, but the developer said, there's nobody out here yet. Why should I have to build it to arterial standards? So the city agreed and let him build it to a subdivision standard, knowing it was classed as an arterial, and then they filled it up with arterial traffic. If you're a property owner in this city, you have to be on guard against actions like that, because when you go buy that house from that developer, is he going to tell you, by the way, you're not going to be able to back out your driveway in about 5 years? Look at the houses that are on the street on the other side of that creek. I bet you those houses are worth 20% more than the ones that are backing out onto that road. And you go through this, and what we've done is we go through and we ruin neighborhoods about 30 years after they were developed, to 40 years after they were developed. We come through and we say, oh, that's been on the plan all along. I looked at my street when I bought my house. I'm a planner. I'm not stupid. That house was on a collector street. Collector streets collect traffic and deliver it to arterials. I'm a citizen. I'm a good citizen. I'm good with that. Collector streets don't create a shortcut between arterials because the city's too cheap to build an arterial. If they wanted connectivity west, they should have taken Rodney Parham straight west. To turn around and take it to the north and then say, by the way, everyone's going to take a left turn, cut through Bud's neighborhood, completely screw up our ability to go to our pool, to be able to walk in our neighborhood, to ride our bikes, because it's cheaper than building an actual arterial. That's just bad planning. And then to call it connectivity is an insult, because when I took Norquist in there, he said there's no way that that should be connected.
So I think Jim is sort of itching to add to that a little bit.
Well, let me give you an alternative to the way Little Rock does it. Little Rock requires developers to build all new streets. The city is not in the street building business. Texas cities, on the other hand, have the ability under state law to impose improvement districts by action of the city council. Now, they're lucky in that they're rapidly growing. So, used to be when you flew into DFW Airport, it's all filled up now, but you could see prairies with a full system of grid streets in place and not a single house out there. So the city, when they opened up land for development, built the infrastructure, imposed an improved property owners improvement district, and then as the property developed, then those property owners paid the city back for the cost of that infrastructure, as opposed to the way Little Rock does it, where you have a master street plan on paper, Bud Street ended in a stub out, right? Now, most people, Bud didn't, because he's a professional planner, but how many people, before you bought your current house, went down to the city and looked at what your street was classified as on the master street plan? How many, if you live in West Little Rock and you have a forest behind you, think that the forest is always going to be there? You don't own those trees, somebody else owns those trees, and you get mad when somebody develops the land and cuts them down. That is human nature. We think things will always be the way they were when we bought the house, and we resist if there's any kind of change. And that's why it's important to build all of those connections on the front end, so that everybody knows what the expectations are from the get-go, and you don't have these incremental decisions that chop up your master street plan, kill connectivity, and then shift the burden from Bud Street to the few remaining streets that are connected, and really devalue those people's property. By the way, every street that I've lived on in Little Rock has been an arterial or a collector street. I have 5 kids and 7 grandkids and haven't lost to one of them yet. It's not a given that you're on one of those kind of streets or that your kid's going to get run over.